Welcome to Rauta, and this time it's time to talk about a black metal documentary movie, so consider this video as opinion/review, documentary review if you want to. Now this one is about a documentary series made in Norway. It's kind of a Nordic production, but I guess mainly run by national Nordisk television. And it's called Helvete, Historien of norsk black metal. That is translated to Helvete as the black metal shop run by Euronymous, rest in peace, of Mayhem, and history of Nordic or Norsk, Norwegian black metal. Now, this is 4 episodes which roughly run some 43 minutes apiece. That is roughly some 3 hours in total, give or take, but roughly around that kind of setting. Now this was aired in Finland just earlier this week, and there was a little bit of hype going on, at least in my social media bubble, if you will. Mainly because, obviously a lot of my friends are related one way or another to metal, and a lot of them are interested in black metal. Now, even people who don't necessarily listen to black metal kind of were like very much interested in this, mainly because there's a lot of people who don't know really what's going on in black metal scene beyond Norway. And some people still think that the only black metal there ever was the kind of a black metal that happened in the early 1990s Norway. And unfortunately, that is very much the flaw with this documentary series as well. Now, there's so many different angles I could talking about when it comes to this series, but first I'd like to introduce it a little bit. Like I said, it runs for 4 episodes, roughly some 40 minutes and then some, and it's technically speaking very, very nicely done. You will see, however, a lot of talking heads, much like my YouTube videos, so in that respect, it isn't that much, phenomenal. But what is interesting, obviously, that you will see actually some, kind of famous names, mainly people from Mayhem, Maniac as the vocalist, but even more so you will see a lot of Necro Butcher, the original member and bass player of Mayhem as well. You will see other famous Norwegian names explaining their opinions about Norwegian black metal, but even more so about Mayhem. Then you will see also some non-Norwegian people, namely Morgan of Marduk. You will see Eric from Watain. You will see a couple of journalists from various countries, I think Danish and British kind. And then you will hear also people, some very interesting ones, mind you, who were part of Norwegian black metal scene, but not necessarily musicians. Mainly this one goes to Putten, the man behind so many classic Norwegian black metal recordings, and especially the main man, behind the Mysteries som Satanas by Mayhem. But most people here are more or less musicians, related one way or another to Mayhem. Some are from other bands, so more like friends or part of the same scene than, Mayhem. And then there are people like Pelle Olin's brother, rest in peace, not Pelle Olin, not his brother then, mind you, who is also known Dead. Dead used to be the kind of a worshipped vocalist of Mayhem. Not the original one, not even the second one, not even the most known one, but maybe the most loved ones. Maybe because of his tragic death, suicide in early 90s, but also because he had these interesting habits, how to perform and prepare for his performance in black metal. Now, whatever the story here is, this is a lot focused on Mayhem. Did I say Mayhem enough times? Now, let me get this clear. Before I get to the flaws, I want to underline another fact that is more about actual facts than this, so-called title or headline for this documentary. Even though it says Historien om norsk black metal, that is history of Norwegian black metal, it's more about documentary about Mayhem. Of all these 4 episodes, roughly 2/3, maybe 3/4 are, more or less about Mayhem. Basically, the 2 first episodes go from Mayhem's history roughly from 1984 to 1990, 2 or so, or even further actually, when you consider, the Nysteristum Satanas and all that stuff. So the first 2 episodes are basically explaining how Mayhem got to be, who were the founding fathers, what kind of stuff they played in the beginning, which kind of guys they were when they were kids and youngsters, basically before they were even a real band. And by real band I mean, getting that infamy, if you will, for being loud and satanic and all that stuff. The band that had more like ill reputation for being, criminal looking, evil, satanic metalheads that were nowhere near to be anything good or beautiful or sweet and stuff like that. So these were teenagers that wanted to sound badass, wanted to spread evil and darkness and all that stuff, much like Euronymous has been, saying in various interviews and whatever. And there's nothing wrong focusing on Mayhem as such. But when you have this massive black metal scene that started basically early 90s, I mean, beyond 90s, Norwegian black metal wasn't so much of a thing. That can be debated and that can be argued that, bands before that had the crown for black metal, and only 1990s it's when it started to happen. But basically the first episode explains stuff that was happening before, and this is something that most people who have been following black metal scene for more than a couple of years probably know already. Youngsters founding their very first black metal band. And it was mentioned that they got a lot of inspiration from bands like Venom and Celtic Frost, but that's pretty much of it. Nothing was mentioned related to, say, Bathory or acts like Merciful Fate or South American scene, which kind of sounds a little bit odd. So basically it is, swiping the slate clean of all black metal that happened before 1990s, or before Norway anyway, which I find a little bit odd because given, Norway had a lot to do with it, the whole black metal movement in the 90s, but still just... Side note, worth mentioning Venom, maybe a little bit Celtic Frost, and that's it pretty much. And even Celtic Frost, I think, more came to be mentioned, when Darkthrone enters the game and so forth. But what I could say, roughly, give or take, 2/3 or 3/4 of this whole documentary series is about Mayhem, which makes me think that it all got started rather as a Mayhem documentary, and then later on was expanded to cover the rest of the Norway. Now, even if we consider that there are other bands, like Darkthrone comes into episode 3 and takes some part of the whole deal there, and there are other guys, explaining about other bands. For example, Snorre Ruch of Thorns is, explaining how he got involved in Mayhem and how his things, inspired Euronymous, and Euronymous stuff was inspiring him. So they had this thing going on, and that is very, very much interesting, as well as Grieghallen production related to the Nysteristum Satanas is very exciting. But, suddenly bands like Immortal, Enslaved, Gehenna, Ancient, Urgehal, stuff like that, they're just, left without a mention. Well, Immortal is there for like 3 seconds on screen, and that's about it. Enslaved is mentioned, I think, in one sentence. But most of the bands are just listed. They are not there. Ulver, Arcturus, stuff like that. Barely even mentioned. Emperor gets like 1 minute of showdown, and that is archive footage. Now, Nocturnal Calder from Darkthrone is explaining things there on episode 3. And he gets something interesting to say, but it's kind of a minimal compared to what Necro Butcher and even old Mayhem members who haven't been part of the band since, late 80s, they get to talk a lot about more, which is kind of a little bit odd. Fenris is only there as an archive footage, and that might be some kind of, I wouldn't say political reasoning, but more like, I don't want to have anything to do with that. That's the feeling I'm getting as an audience. I don't know the real reasons why some people are not there. Obviously, wickedness, of Burzum was mentioned, and these murders and stuff like murder and arsons were mentioned there, but wickedness had declined according to this documentary, declined to be part of the stuff, which I then again understand, but it also makes this little bit like empty in terms of Burzum. Burzum is obviously explained there how it affected music, much like Darkthrone in the episode 3, And then this unanimous murder by Vikernes is explained briefly. Everybody knows it probably so far. And arsons, well, they have a big part of, Norwegian's infamy related to black metal. But that's pretty much of it. I mean, episode 3 is a bit of mix and match with Dark Throne, Burzum, and Mayhem. And that's the whole deal there. Well, Thorns is there, but, and that's the most important thing, in my opinion. Thorns finally gets recognized as one of the most important ones, even though in terms of discography, Thorns never really did that much of a music. But compared to so many other bands, which are not even mentioned, but guess should have been mentioned, are not there. So it's nice at least to see Snorre Ruch and Thorns getting this praise and recognition for his work. But still, it makes me wonder. You see, for example, Ulver mentioned there. But then again, Ulver has played only like a couple of real black metal albums, and the rest of the stuff is, well, very much different stuff. Pop music and synthesizer music and whatever. But yet at the same time, you will see Ulver main man Garm talking about the past. You will even see Cadaver guys, Cadaver being the death metal band from Norway, explaining the things in the past. But nowhere it is mentioned that Euronymous, when he was basically disrespecting death metal and saying people to get the fuck out of death metal scene. Nowhere it is, brought into attention that Cadaver was a death metal band. So people who don't know the band might be thinking, okay, these are some of the death metal, black metal guys in the scene and blah, blah, blah. While there is clearly said death metal wasn't accepted, if you will, and still nothing is said about these Cadaver guys. Like, were they accepted as a exception to the whole thing, or what's the deal here? So there's a little bit weird thing going on, and that's what here and there. Now episode 4 is like made almost like a different group of people. Suddenly this is fast forwarded to nowadays black metal. Dimmu Borgir is brought to the scene and saying like, yeah, they got this local Spielmannen award, which is kind of a Grammy Awards of Norway, if you will, and Satyricon is explaining what was going on in the modern days suddenly, and also playing for the big audience outside, and normal people, not metalheads, are shown there to be seen like, yeah, it's a great music, yeah, we like this music. We don't, but we clap and all that stuff. So it's more like 2 episodes of Mayhem, 1 episode about Burzum, Thorns, and Dark Throne, and suddenly, yeah, let's conclude the whole shit and, finish this whole story. Which makes me think, what happened? First you have 1 episode of 80s, 1 episode of early 90s, these are Mayhem episodes. Then some like, okay, let's wrap things up, and then conclude by adding an episode about what happened like 20 years later. So it's a weird big part is just missing with a lot of bands I just mentioned. Now, I would like to say, if I was totally unaware of what was going on in the Norwegian black metal and have never ever read about it, and if I was a young guy who just found metal like a couple of years ago, I would say, yeah, this is a pretty good damn documentary because it told me a lot of things which I didn't know. But coming from, this whole thing, as a person who has read mainstream interviews, seen earlier footage of what was going on with Weakerness, with Mayhem and all that stuff, having done on my own interviews and all that stuff, not too shabby. So for veterans, I would say this is roughly maybe 7 out of 10. There's some really cool anecdotes like this Greek Holland thing and Thorns thing by Snorre Ruch. But when it comes to the Mayhem parts and the murder with Weakerness and all that stuff, yeah, it's more like, okay, repeating the old stuff which we already know, and you don't really have to tell that story so many times over and over again. Now, having this is history of Norwegian black metal is too much of an overstatement. It is as if I'm saying, yeah, my YouTube channel is a history of extreme metal or whatever. It's just exaggerating a lot. From a technical point of view, this is very nicely done, obviously. It's not done some by 2 guys with a camera and mic, so it's way more professional, say, compared to my interviews. There are no sound quality problems, obviously. You don't really see problems in any kind of a technical thing. But then again, it's been funded and, all the equipment and whatever given and pro editors and stuff like that. You've seen multitude of people listed in the crew section, when you're seeing the end texts and all. So obviously from a technical point of view, very, very cool. But with that kind of expertise and the amount of people that they had access to, this could have been a lot better. So for me, it seems something changed while this whole thing was being filmed. From this pretty cool of a start, which started with Mayhem introduction, it could have been going on with these different years and with different bands and explaining the history more about that instead of like just wrapping it up in the episode 4. So while I could say, yeah, watch it if you don't know the story, I can hardly say, watch it if you already know the story. So it's a little bit of a hit and miss in that respect. But definitely nice to see this one. I could have been spending my time a lot of worse ways. So can't really say it's not worth a watch. Just maybe promising a little bit too much versus what was actually given. Now, I don't know where you will find it. I guess people in the Nordic countries will find this miniseries documentary on the national series, broadcasting services, whatever. At least in Finland, you can pretty much find it in Yle Areena. I think Norwegian people can find it on the local, is NRK or something like that, kind of a broadcast service. But for the rest of the country, I don't know. Maybe you will find it once again on YouTube later on. It was there during the spring, I was told, but then withdrawn. And maybe it will come up for rental for some kind of service. I don't know. You do your Googling because I don't know what's going to be in the future or where it is right now. But now at least you know this one. I will include the IMDb link in the description so you can at least get the basic information about the documentary and so forth. But I don't know, give it a go or give it not, up to you. But if you have watched it, let me know how you liked it. Thanks for watching, take care and see you soon. Bye bye.